On a cold Tuesday morning this past January, a white Tacoma rolled into my bay with the owner already apologizing for it. He was not angry, he was embarrassed. He told me the truck idled like it was trying to shake itself off the motor mounts. It stalled twice at red lights on the way over, and his fuel economy had quietly slipped over the last few months. He had been to a shop the week before. They had talked about a throttle position sensor, a possible electronic throttle actuator, carbon-related induction service, diagnostic time, and labor. The estimate sat just under $900. The truck had 96,000 miles on it. Today, I am going to show you the hidden part, responsible for almost every symptom that man described. Why it gets caked in gunk on practically every Toyota truck eventually, and how cleaning it yourself costs you basically nothing, while shops quietly bill hundreds for the exact same 15 minutes of work. I did not pull a single sensor on that Tacoma. I did not order a part. I unbolted an intake hose, looked inside one component most owners have never laid eyes on, and found exactly what I expected: a thick, sticky, brownish-black ring of carbon and oily film coating the inside of the throttle body and the edges of the throttle plate. 20 minutes and one rag later, the truck idled smooth, pulled clean off the line, and stopped trying to die at every stop sign. That is the whole story. That is the entire $900 problem. I've been turning wrenches on Toyotas for over 2 decades, and if there's one thing I want every truck owner to understand, it's this. Most of the rough, idle, stalling, and slow fuel economy bleed people panic over isn't a failed part. It's a dirty one. And the dirtiest, most overlooked part on the whole intake is the throttle body. Here's where it lives and what it actually does. After air gets pulled through your air filter, it travels down the intake tube and reaches the throttle body, a metal housing with a round plate inside it called the throttle plate, or butterfly valve. When you press the accelerator, that plate opens and lets air rush into the engine. When you let off, it closes back down to a precise, tiny opening that controls how much air feeds the engine at idle. On modern Toyota trucks, there's no cable anymore. It's all electronic, drive-by-wire. The pedal sends a signal, the computer decides exactly how far that plate opens, and it manages your idle down to a hair's width of airflow. And that's the problem. Because that plate has to seal and meter air with surgical precision, even a thin layer of crud throws the whole thing off. So, where does the gunk come from? This part surprises people. It's not dirt from the road. Your engine is feeding itself the filth. Every engine produces blow-by small amounts of combustion gases and oil vapor that slip past the piston rings into the crankcase. To deal with that, your truck has the positive crankcase ventilation system, which routes those oily vapors back into the intake to be burned instead of vented to the atmosphere. It's good for emissions, but it means a constant fine mist of oil vapor is drifting through your intake right across the back of that throttle plate every single mile you drive. Mix that oil mist with carbon and the airborne grime that makes it past the filter, and over tens of thousands of miles it bakes onto the throttle bore and the edges of the plate as a sticky varnish. On trucks that idle a lot, do short trips, or sit in traffic, it builds even faster. Now here's why the symptoms feel so much worse than the cause. At idle, your throttle plate is nearly closed. The computer is metering airflow through a gap thinner than a few sheets of paper. When carbon coats that gap, it physically restricts the airflow the computer is expecting, so the engine starves slightly. The idle drops, surges, hunts up and down, or the truck just stalls when you come to a stop. The computer, doing exactly what it was designed to do, tries to compensate. It nudges the throttle open further to keep the engine alive. It adjusts, it adapts, and just like a phone that has been running for weeks without a restart, it starts behaving around a problem instead of solving it. This is the part most drivers never connect. Your truck isn't reacting to the world directly. It is reacting to what the throttle body lets through and then learning around whatever it finds. A clean throttle body and a gunked one produce completely different idle behavior, and the computer slowly memorizes the wrong one as normal. That's why people say it happened gradually. The fuel economy did not fall off a cliff. It faded. The idle did not break. It drifted. No single dramatic event, just a slow slide away from how the truck used to feel, which is exactly the kind of problem that gets misdiagnosed as something expensive. And sometimes it does throw a code. You might see a P0507, which simply means the idle revolutions per minute are higher than the computer expects, or throttle-related codes in the P2100 range. A shop sees those codes, sees a slightly out-of-range reading on the throttle position, and the conversation drifts toward replacing the throttle body or the sensor. New throttle body, programming, diagnostic fee, labor. Meanwhile, the actual fix was a rag and a can of cleaner. I am not telling you every shop is dishonest. Plenty are not. But the incentives are bent, and you should understand how. A throttle body cleaning takes 15 minutes and produces no part on the invoice. There is nothing to sell, no markup, no warranty claim. A throttle body replacement is a clean line item with a part number and an hour of billable labor. Guess which one fits more comfortably into the way a shop makes money? The cleaning rarely gets offered first, even though on a high-mileage Toyota, it should be the very first thing anyone checks. So let me show you exactly how to do it, because this is genuinely something most owners can handle in their own driveway. First, the truck should be cool and off. You will need a can of throttle body cleaner, not carburetor cleaner, not brake cleaner, throttle body cleaner specifically, because it is formulated not to damage the sensors and coatings in there. A microfiber rag, maybe an old soft toothbrush, and a pair of gloves round out the list. That can of cleaner costs a few dollars and does this job many times over, which is the entire point. The shop charges you hundreds in labor for the same 15 minutes you can do for the price of a coffee. Loosen the clamp on the intake hose where it meets the throttle body and pull the hose back. Now you are looking right at the throttle plate. On a neglected truck, you will see that brown-black ring of varnish coating the bore and crusted around the edge of the plate. That is your culprit, sitting right there in plain sight. Spray a little cleaner onto your rag, not blasting it straight into the housing, and gently wipe the bore and both faces of the throttle plate. You can carefully open the plate by hand to reach behind it, but on electronic throttle bodies, be gentle and do not force the motor. Work the rag and the soft brush until the metal comes back to a clean, dull silver. Here is the one detail that matters more than any other, and it is where people cause real problems. Many modern throttle bodies, Toyotas included, have a thin protective coating inside the bore. Do not scrub it like you are scouring a pan. Do not gouge it with anything metal or abrasive. Wipe, do not grind. Aggressive scrubbing can strip that coating and actually create the idle problem you were trying to fix. Gentle and thorough beats, violent every time. Once it is clean and the cleaner has flashed off, reconnect the hose, snug the clamp, and you are done with the wrenching. Now comes the step almost everyone skips, and it is the difference between a truck that idles beautifully and one that idles worse than before. After you clean an electronic throttle body, the computer is still running on its old, learned idle settings, the ones it adapted around all that carbon. With a clean plate suddenly flowing more air, the idle can run high or surge until the computer relearns. So you have to let it relearn. Reconnect everything, start the truck, and let it idle with no load, no air conditioning, no headlights pulling on it for several minutes while it settles. Then drive it normally and gently through a few drive cycles. On most Toyota trucks, the idle air volume relearns itself within a few cycles of calm driving. If you have a scan tool, some models have a specific idle relearn procedure you can run directly. Either way, do not clean it, start it, and immediately stomp the throttle. That just teaches the computer chaos. Calm idle, light driving, and it rebuilds a correct baseline on its own. Do that, and the truck that came in, shaking and stalling, drives away smooth. Not faster, not louder, just right. Now I want to be straight with you, the same way I would be if you were standing in my bay. Because knowing when this fix works is just as important as knowing how. A dirty throttle body causes rough idle, stalling at stops, hesitation, and a slow decline in miles per gallon. If those are your symptoms on a higher mileage truck, cleaning the throttle body is one of the smartest first moves you can make, and it costs you almost nothing to rule it in or out. But it is not a cure for everything. If you have misfires, a hard mechanical knock, a transmission that will not shift, or a coolant leak, a clean throttle body will not touch any of that. And sometimes a rough idle really is a vacuum leak, a tired PCV valve, dirty fuel injectors, or a genuinely failing throttle motor. The beauty of starting with a cleaning is that it's a filter. If it fixes the idle, you just saved yourself hundreds. If the symptoms come right back, you've lost a rag in 15 minutes and you've learned the problem is real and somewhere else. Either way, you walk in better informed than the person reading a $900 estimate and just nodding. And here's how you keep it from coming back. Change your oil on schedule and don't overfill it, because excess oil means more vapor through the PCV system and more gunk on the plate. Replace your PCV valve when it's due. It's a cheap part that controls how much of that oily vapor reaches your intake in the first place. Keep a clean air filter. And if you do a lot of short trips and stop and go driving, just plan to pop that intake hose off and check the throttle body every 30,000 miles or so. It takes 2 minutes to look, and catching the buildup early means you're wiping a light film instead of chiseling baked on varnish. That's the whole secret. The part is hidden, but the fix isn't complicated and it isn't expensive. The expensive version only exists because most owners never knew to look inside that little housing, and a lot of shops are perfectly happy to keep it that way. So before you authorize a throttle body replacement, before you assume your truck is wearing out, before you hand over the credit card, pop the hose, look at the plate, wipe it clean, let it relearn, and then decide. Most of the time, that's the entire repair. If this changed how you think about that rough idle, hit like so more Toyota owners see it. Subscribe if you want weekly breakdowns that keep your truck running for 300,000 miles instead of draining your wallet. And if you have ever fixed a stalling problem with a rag and a can of cleaner that a shop wanted to charge you hundreds for, drop it in the comments, because the most expensive repair is not the one that breaks your truck. It is the one you paid for and never needed.